Hello, everybody, wherever you may be, from coast to coast and sea to shining sea. Welcome to your solar weather update for amateur and shortwave radio. Today is Wednesday, the 26th. This will cover conditions from the 26th through the 28th of October. First, we'll take a look at the A1A. Expect this screen here, this shot of the sun, to kind of look like an X-ray of the human body. It's kind of the same principle. It gives us an idea of how active the sun is in the solar regions where solar sunspots are. And if you look on the sunspots, you kind of see them here. They're all lit up. That's basically the solar sunspot regions currently here. And if you look carefully around 10 o'clock, you're seeing a lot of brightness there. That's another sunspot region coming around for this weekend that should help pump up SFIs into that 125 to 135 or 140 range that I forecast last week for CQ Worldwide this weekend. Here is a partial backside view of the sun. This is from a spacecraft that has just a little glimpse of the backside of the sun within that white crescent area called the east limb. You can see the rectangle there, and that bright spot that we showed here on the A1A about 10 o'clock is in a rectangle. So that's going to be a sunspot region coming as well for the coming weekend. The last 5 days of the magnetometer view of the sun, this would be taking all the bright spots away from the sun and just focusing on those sunspot regions. Why is this important? Because the sunspot regions, the radiation from the sunspots, help to charge up our ionosphere to make amateur radio calls, as well as to help shortwave radio stations to be able to communicate well across the world. This is an amazing way to take a look at those sunspots carefully and remove all the rest of the brightness from the sun. This is the way it looked 5 days ago, and as you watch the sunspots progress through the days, you'll see how they're moving around in the sun and where we're at as of today, which is right here. You see the new sunspot region there on the top left around 10 o'clock, 3133 and 3131, showing right there on the northeast limb of the sun. Coronal hole map. This is an important piece to solar weather because if coronal holes are facing Earth, the sunspot, the solar wind actually increases towards Earth. So the more of these that are facing Earth, usually the higher the solar wind will be. And if a sunspot region approaches or goes through one of these regions, it will really jump up our A index and it can cause a geomagnetic storm that's pretty heavy for the amateur radio bands. Right now, it's not too bad. We have 3 sunspot coronal holes facing Earth there at 37, 36, and 38. 34 is just sliding off of the southwest limb of the sun, no longer impacting Earth. Last 3 days of solar flare detection, this would be the roadmap to what's ahead. If we take a look at this, right now we're just about to a sea level baseline. And that's important because if we get to a sea level, that means that we should have reasonably strong solar flux index numbers, and we want those numbers to be as high as possible. The best conditions you can get typically is over 150 for 3 days, and then also a noise floor, KP index, 2 or less. That means that the geomagnetic field is quiet and noise floors stay quiet. Right now, we don't have that high of an SFI, but we've got a little bump coming again, I believe, later today in the solar flux index once they send that information up. Space weather update from solarham.net. This talks about those 2 sunspot regions on the northeast corner, 3133 and 3131. Both of them are active. That's going to help to increase our solar conditions. SFI up to 116. That's now approaching the area where I felt CQ Worldwide this weekend would be for the sideband contest. I still believe this goes up to the 125 to 135 or 40 range for the weekend. It looks like we're going to get the sunspots to bring up that SFI even more. Sunspot smooth, the second number is for smooth sunspot number. That's at 72. That's up 26 from yesterday. Area number is also way up. It's now at 340. That's up 210. This means the SFIs today, when they release it at 20 UTC, should be even higher. I would say somewhere between 117 and 125. We'll see what the SFI number shows up as tomorrow here. I should say later today, but I believe our SFIs are coming up. And that's great because it means our ionosphere is going to be charged even more to make amazing calls. KP index, this is the other side of it. If the sun itself, if the magnetosphere view, all these sunspots means good radiation for our ionosphere to be healthy and be able to refract signals, the KP index is the other side of that. It's kind of like salt and pepper in a way, I suppose, but this is your noise floors. So if you're taking a look at how the SFI is charged, and we take a look at that through, the magnetometer view, we know the sunspots are there. We know the SFI is also there. And we also know that we've got some really good conditions for noise floors, KP index. That's how much static there will be on the bands. This is fantastic. Look, we've got K0s and K1s now over the last 24 hours. This means good noise floors today and tomorrow. I think they're going to rise again on Friday, but nothing terrible. Maybe up to an S2 or S3, we'll have to see. 3-day geomagnetic forecast. This would be for how this condition here, the KP index, is going to react over the next 3 days. Today, quiet, G0 conditions, which is no geomagnetic storm, KP2, as high as KP2 or maybe a 3 tomorrow. And then Friday, that's where things get a little bit loud, KP3 or 4. If it goes to a 4, that would be a minor geomagnetic storm. But right now, we're not calling for that. We think the noise floors on this map here are probably going to go up to a KP3, but not really any higher. Your SFI condition from QRZ, and this is what a lot of hams look at when they determine, okay, what bands am I going to work today? And this is great for people in terms of giving you some solar metrics, but it also is kind of a little misleading. Let me get into that. The SFI 116, sunspot number 78, A index is 4. That's great. We want it under 10. K index is 1. That's our noise floors. And the K index goes to right there, 4th from the bottom on the left, where it says geomagnetic field, very quiet. K1 is very quiet. If that was up to a K3, for example, it would say, minor storm, or KP4, minor storm. And then the signal noise level below that, instead of it saying S0 to S1, it would be S2 to S3 or S3 to S4, meaning that on the lower bands below 10 megahertz, your noise floors are going to be at S3 or S4. That means the signal has to be at least an S4, just a little more than S4 or higher for you to make the calls. Thankfully today, it's K1. That means quiet conditions, very quiet. This is a great day to DX and shortwave or amateur radio calls. This is a great prelude to CQ Worldwide. BZ latitude, that's the bottom corner of the first paragraph up top, is minus 1.4. That's not a good thing. That means the solar wind that's hitting the Van Allen radiation belts here around Earth is pointing south. It means the South Pole is getting more of the radiation than the North Pole is, and that can create fading on the bands. Like we get a lot of QSB from that. We can also miss some signals sometimes because the BZ latitude it makes the northern hemisphere just a little bit reactive on the ionosphere. But that number is going to go positive today. It's a little earlier today here in the day in the northwest of the United States. As the day progresses, that it will go positive. So that area will just not be a concern whatsoever. The solar wind also, very quiet today. It's only 349.0 kilometers per second. We start worrying about it when it gets over 500,000 kilometers per second, because that means that coronal holes are just pouring in to the Earth, and it's creating a condition that will raise our solar wind over 500 kilometers per second. Right now, it's really, really low, so that's good. Today, EME degree is good for moon bouncers. There have been some areas around the world that have had some, sporadic 6-meter propagation. So keep an eye on 6 meters today. Definitely possible because 10 meters is open early here in the day in the Northwest. Very good conditions on 10 meters. And here it says in the HF conditions, both 12 and 10 are poor. I would totally disagree with that. There's some great conditions already here in the Northwest of the United States. Kilo Charlie 2 Golf map. What this is your maximum usable frequencies worldwide, and that's as of right now. But this is a repeat of yesterday. It's the same forecast that we had yesterday. 10 meters as high as southern Sweden and Norway, and goes all the way up into Canada towards the northern provinces of Canada. So this is great conditions for people around the world to work on their amateur radio or their shortwave radios. Let's take a closer look at Europe to the United States and Canada. Great conditions there, 28 megahertz. The yellow ones are 10 meters. 10 meters is fantastic. That means we can make great DX calls, and that's where you want to work, right below the maximum usable frequency. So Europe today has been in 10-meter land up to southern Europe, southern Sweden and Norway, and going all the way into the United States. Great conditions. Let's start here on this map with the U.S. Currently 14 megahertz. That means 20 meters is active in Fairbanks. 17 megahertz around Denver, Colorado. 29 megahertz on a beautiful early morning there in Southern California. 34 if you're near, say, Kansas area, middle of Kansas. Great conditions there. That's the 10-meter band moving north. You see the ridges that are moving that way. It will continue to move north into Canada as the day goes on. So Canada, be ready. 10 meters probably within the hour in the southern parts of the provinces of Canada. 32 megahertz, so 10 meters as well, open in the Great Lakes. 22 Nova Scotia, 28 around New England, 27 Brownsville, Texas. Heading down south into South America, it's all 10 meters. Great pipeline from North America to South America today on 10 meters. If you go towards Europe right now, 28 megahertz still in Great Britain, 25 in the dark now in France. Of course, when we go in the dark, the maximum usable frequencies will always drop. 33 megahertz still in Spain, 35 Portugal, 28 megahertz in Italy, 21 if you're in Bulgaria. And as we head over to the south part of the world, we're taking a look at that 10-meter band just right through South America. There's only a small area through South America that's on either the 12-meter band, but most of the South American continent is all on 10 meters. That goes all the way across the Atlantic Ocean into Africa. If we're going into the part of the South Seas here, the southeast part of the world, you're seeing in Australia, northern Australia, pretty good around Townsville, 16 megahertz, so on 20 meters overnight, still great. 13 megahertz, Brisbane, 12 megahertz if you're down towards Sydney, 14 megahertz, North Island of New Zealand. These numbers will increase today. They really will. Let me get a little drink of water here. That is so much great. Thank you. That's much better now. So both the North and South Islands of New Zealand will go as high as 30 megahertz today. Heading towards the island of Japan, 12 megahertz to 15. So in some areas of Japan, they're already on the 20 meter band, but 10 meters will be coming once the sun comes up and they have a brand new day, both in Japan as well as Australia and New Zealand. So a wonderful day around the world to work close to 10 meters or on 10 meters around the world. Your forecast today, powered by ICOM. I come for the love of ham radio. And bear with me, I went through this a little slower. I had a comment from someone who just didn't quite understand things, and I really wanted to explain it better. So I'm sorry for the length of this weather segment, but I do want to help people with it, and I hope it does help you. SFIs to rise this weekend to 125 to 135 SFI. Still believe that should happen by the 31st of October. Noise floors, and I better stop there. I know the 31st is past CQ worldwide, but I do believe we will hit 125 over the weekend on the Solar Flux Index. Great conditions then to work 10 meters in most areas of the world. Noise floors, so your static level on the radio, S0 to S1 today, S0 to S2 tomorrow, S1 to S3 on Friday at times. Voice bands, northern, southern, and the mid-latitude, so around the world today, should be 20, 17, 15, 12, and the 10-meter band. People with CB radio skip, you like to work 11 meters, should be open in the northern hemisphere as well as the mid and south latitudes. Data modes, this is a great day to work FT8 and FT4. I mean, it's just beautiful conditions today. Low noise floors and 10 meters literally from about 45 degrees south to 45 degrees north in the northern hemisphere. It's just a beautiful day to work your radio and make great calls or hear some amazing shortwave. So data modes, 30 meters to 10 meters during the daytime in the north, mid, and south latitudes. Tonight on your amateur radio bands, noise floors S0 tonight will go high as S3 at the end of the week. nighttime amateur radio bands, these are going to be good for you. 160, 80, 60, 40, 30. And remember, if you want to make some really long calls on your just at your nighttime, just as you're going into sunset, make sure and work just below the maximum usable frequency where you live in the world at sunset. And a great maximum usable frequency map can be found here at KC2G MUF map. Just Kilo Charlie 2 Golf MUF map. It's beautiful, it's easy to use, it'll help you know where the maximum usable frequency is where you live. So some good conditions, work that maximum usable frequency at sunset for some great gray line calls. Then overnight, go into the 40 and 80 meter band, which will have low noise floors tonight and tomorrow night. Shortwave bands today, 31, 25, 22, and 19. Your 25 meter band and 31 meter bands will be beautiful today, and 22 and 19 should work well in all around the world here today. Great SFI and a good low noise floor to work your shortwave radio during the daytime. Tonight for shortwave, S0 to noise, that's a nil noise floor. So low noise floors tonight. That means low static on your nighttime shortwave. They will go maybe as high as an S3 at times by Friday night. The bands to work will be 120, 90, 75, 60, 49, 41, 31, 25, 22. And the 19-meter band is going to be open after sunset in the southern hemisphere for about 90 minutes after sunset, and then the 19-meter band will simply fade away. Your nighttime great short-wave conditions over the last few nights have been 60, 49, 41, and 31. Just phenomenal nighttime conditions to listen to shortwave radio. That's it. That is your forecast today around the world. And if you have any questions that you'd like to pose to me, I'd be honored to answer them if I can. You can reach me at info@hamradiolive.org. I'll be sure and do a full show for Ham Radio Live listeners in just about an hour. Until then, wherever you may be, God bless you. Thanks for listening to this weather segment, and enjoy your radio today. It's a perfect day to use it. Bye, everybody.